And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Merry Christmas on this Christmas Eve. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook. As we go into early Christmas Day, first, we've had a storm come into the northwestern area of the Gulf up into south central Alaska, and by Christmas morning that system will have dissipated, moving inland, though it has pushed some moisture further inland. There is yet another low pressure area that's going to be lifting out of the North Pacific up into the eastern and north central Gulf as we go through late Christmas Day and on Tuesday. And that's going to bring some more inclement weather along with gusty winds here along areas of the Panhandle into the northern Gulf Coast. Farther north, though, early Christmas Day, we do find an area of IFR along the spine and south side of the Brooks Range, also up into the lower Chukchi Sea, and some areas there kind of between Nome and maybe Golovin. And then an area out over the central Bering where IFR conditions, but pretty small in comparison to what we were dealing with here with the stormy pattern leading up to Christmas. By Christmas Day afternoon, we can see the IFR conditions associated with this area of low pressure as it continues to lift back toward the north-northwest. Still pockets of IFR along the south slopes here of the Brooks Range north of the Yukon River from, say, around Arctic Village, eastern Yukon Flats, and then out down to the central Bering Sea, where we have a weak area of low pressure just kind of sitting and circulating within this region. The new low coming up into the Gulf. And generally speaking, high pressure is going to gradually be building through midweek. Not a strong high, but general high pressure here over the interior. That will allow for better conditions. VFR will be more dominant here, especially southwest, south central Alaska. So a break definitely from the stormy weather we've seen. Now by Tuesday morning, the day after Christmas, we have more extensive IFR, northern Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast, out over a good portion of the Gulf as this low works its way back to the northwest. And some of this moisture is also going to pull up along the eastern mainland, so we do expect some IFR conditions on the north side of the Alaska Range, 40-mile gold country up toward Fairbanks early Tuesday morning, and then off of the southwest coast. And then finally, Tuesday afternoon, that low pressure system will weaken as it comes back toward Prince William Sound. Generally MVFR here over the inner channels of the Panhandle. This here, I'll have to wait to see if it's truly VFR. There may be some pockets of MVFR and even localized IFR, depending on how that moisture disperses once it does make a trek a little bit more inland. Otherwise, back toward the central Aleutian from near St. Matthew down through St. Paul, we do expect IFR conditions. But overall, the weather pattern across the state will be quieter as we go through the midweek compared to what we had experienced leading up to Christmas Day. So the passes here up along the central eastern part of the Brooks Range, Anatuvik Pass, IFR early Monday, Christmas Day, giving way to MVFR. Adigan Pass, IFR early, then MVFR. Further south and west, good news on Christmas Day. We do expect VFR conditions along the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, winding up to Rainy Pass, Windy Pass, eastward through Isabel and Mentasta passes. We anticipate VFR conditions on Christmas Day. Further southward, across the Copper River Valley, generally at VFR conditions, and even Portage Pass there looking to be VFR on Christmas Day. And then in the far north end of the Panhandle at Chilkoot and White, we do expect MVFR conditions to lower to IFR by the time we get into later Christmas Day in the afternoon and evening hours. So that next system is going to be coming up out of the North Pacific and into the eastern and then north central Gulf later Christmas Day and on Tuesday. Freezing levels aloft early Christmas Day. We're going to find the highest ones south of Haida Gwaii because leading out ahead of this area of low pressure, we expect that push of warmer air. So 2,000 feet plus at the southern southwestern Panhandle, 4,000 feet around Haida Gwaii, and then 6,000 and 8,000 feet further southwest there, Vancouver Island off the Pacific Northwest. Otherwise, not much here out over the mainland of Alaska, and the surface freezing line runs from areas of the inner channels of the Panhandle to along the northern Gulf Coast, dipping down into the western Gulf and then back across the lower Alaska Peninsula and lower portion of the Bering Sea, passing then through the western Aleutians. Greatest threat for icing will be With that area of low pressure lifting northward up into the Gulf, that stream of milder, moist air coming in up over the Panhandle, we expect the potential for, with the precipitation that's going to be occurring within this area, a freezing level above 6,000 feet where there could be icing above that. Above 4,000 feet here across the northern Panhandle, northeastern Gulf. Areas within the interior and especially through the north, generally above 2,000 feet, you may run into some icing, and a greater threat off the coast of the northwest Arctic coast there between Point Ley and Utqiagvik out over the Chukchi Sea and the Arctic Oceans. So looking at upper level jet stream winds, we still have troughiness sitting here over southwest Alaska with ahead of it stronger jet core to 135 knots up into British Columbia, northern Panhandle up into the Yukon. There are south winds aloft at 30,000 feet, around 110 knots. Behind me there's a jet max here well southwest of the Aleutian chain that has winds in excess of 130 to 150 knots. And at 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, a broad belt of 50 to 70 knot winds along the British Columbia coast cutting across Haida Gwaii, and that's in response to that low that's it's got some potency to it as it lifts back to the north and northwest. So that is going to bring along some stronger winds here, especially as we get to lower levels. We can see by Christmas Day, the low pressure circulation as it works its way off of the Panhandle and Haida Gwaii coastline. We could see some winds up here, 50 to near 70 knots coming in up on the northeastern quadrant of the low, backside of it more like 50, 60 knots. And if we look at the threat for turbulence, there will be Christmas Day, especially by the time we get in the afternoon and evening, along the outer west and southwest coast of the Panhandle and down through Haida Gwaii, Dixon Entrance. There could be some low-level wind shear later in the day as that front with the winds shifting from surface to aloft. And we expect that turbulence to generally run surface to 6,000 feet. And then behind me there is one area here out toward the central western Aleutians where we expect some moderate turbulence surface to 3,000 feet.